David Chun was going to miss his flight, Gate 47B. Boarding in 12 minutes. He was stuck in security, a place where time itself seems to slow down, trapped behind a family of 5 who looked like they'd DDS discovered the concept of air travel. It was a comedy of errors. Laptops stayed stubbornly inside bags, oversized liquids were presented with innocent surprise, and shoes remained firmly on feet. David tapped his foot, a frantic rhythm against the cold airport floor. He glanced at his watch. 11:43 a.m. His flight to San Francisco, the one carrying his entire future, was scheduled to depart at 11:55. 12 minutes, that's all he had. 12 minutes to navigate the security maze, sprint to a gate that felt a million miles away, and actually get on the plane. It wasn't just tight, it was impossible. Up ahead, a debate was raging between the family and a TSA agent over a full-size bottle of shampoo. It was a battle of wills, and David was the collateral damage. His frustration was a physical thing, a tight knot in his chest. This wasn't just any trip. This was the asterisk trip. A 4 o'clock meeting in San Francisco, a pitch that represented the culmination of 6 months of sleepless nights and relentless work. 3 hours in a conference room would decide everything. He'd either convince a room full of investors to believe in his startup, or he'd have to watch his dream die on the vine. Missing this flight wasn't an option. Being late wasn't an option. His entire career was riding on this. Finally, a breakthrough. The family and their contraband shampoo were cleared. David practically flew through the scanner. He grabbed his bag, his laptop, jamming his feet back into his untied shoes as he boarded Gate 47B. Terminal C. Quick glance at the signs confirmed his worst fears. He was in Terminal A. The Denver airport is a sprawling beast. Getting from A to C meant a mad dash to the underground train, a ride through the tunnel, and then another sprint. Run. He dodged and weaved through a sea of slow-moving travelers, his wheeled carry-on clattering behind him, his laptop bag thumping a frantic beat against his hip. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from his co-founder, Jessica. The words burned into his brain. Investors confirmed for 4 p.m. Don't be late. Everything rides on this. As if he needed a reminder, he skidded to a halt at the train platform just in time to see a set of doors slide shut, the train pulling away into the darkness. The digital sign overhead offered cold comfort. Next train in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. He checked his watch again. 11:46. 9 minutes until boarding ended. He could still make it. It would be a photo finish, but he could make it. Those 4 minutes felt like an eternity. The platform filled up around him. When the next train finally arrived, he pushed his way into the crowded car, ignoring the annoyed glares from other passengers. The doors closed, sealing his fate. The train lurched forward, plunging into the tunnel. Terminal C, the door slid open and he exploded out of the car. Once again, pushing through the crowd, running on pure adrenaline. He could see it. In the distance, a beacon of hope. Gate 47B, his watch read 11:51. 4 minutes left. The finish line was in sight. He was going to make it. He was actually going to make it. And then he heard it, a sound that cut through the airport noise, through his own panicked thoughts. A child crying. He glanced over as he ran. Near Gate 42, a little girl, no older than 4 or 5, stood all alone. Tears streamed down her face as she turned in circles, her tiny body radiating pure terror. Se was lost. David's first instinct, his only logical instinct, was to keep running. Someone else would help her. An airport employee, another passenger. Someone. Anyone. He had 4 minutes. 4 minutes between success and failure. His mind screamed at him to go, to not look back. But as he ran past, their eyes met, and in that split second, the little girl looked at him with a gaze so full of desperate hope, of terrified pleading, that his feet just stopped. His mad dash came to an abrupt halt. It turned back, his heart pounding for an entirely new reason. It knelt down, trying to make himself less intimidating. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice softer than he expected. The little girl could only nod, her sobs shaking her small frame. "Where's your family?" he asked, gently. Through her tears, she managed to get a few words out. "I don't know. Mommy went to the bathroom and told me to wait, but I saw a puppy and I followed it, and now I can't find Mommy." David's eyes darted around frantically. No one seemed to be looking for a lost child. No panicked parents scanning the crowd. No airport staff rushing to the scene. He looked at his watch. 11:52. 3 minutes. 3 minutes until the gate closed on his flight, on his future. He took a deep breath. "Okay, sweetheart. Don't worry. We're going to find your mommy." "What's her name?" "Mommy," she whispered. "Right," David said, trying to smile. "But what's her actual name?" "What do other people call her?" The little girl sniffled, thinking hard. Sarah? I think. Okay. Sarah, that's a great start. And what gate were you at? Do you remember the number?" The girl just shook her head, a fresh wave of tears threatening to start. The panic David had been fighting for the last 20 minutes was back, but this time it was different. He needed to get to his gate. He needed to board that plane. But he couldn't just leave a terrified 4-year-old alone in the middle of a massive airport. He just couldn't. His entire future was waiting at gate for 7B, but a lost little girl was standing right in front of him. And in that moment, David Chun had to make a choice. Have you ever faced a choice where doing the right thing felt like the wrong decision? A moment where your gut told you to help, but your brain screamed about the consequences. David found himself in exactly that spot, standing in the middle of a bustling airport. His flight to San Francisco, the one holding the fate of his entire company, was boarding in just a few minutes. This wasn't just any meeting. It was the meeting. The one with investors who held the key to their future, the culmination of 6 months of relentless work and his entire life savings. Failure wasn't an option. As he hurried toward his gate, a tiny sob cut through the airport noise. A little girl no older than 4 was standing alone, tears streaming down her face, her eyes wide with terror. "I can't find my mommy," she whispered. David's heart sank. He checked his watch. Time was ticking. Every instinct screamed at him to keep moving, to let someone else handle it. This wasn't his problem. But then he looked at her face, lost and so scared. How could he just walk away? "It's okay," he heard himself say, his voice softer than he expected. "We'll find her. Let's go to that counter right there. The nice people will help us." He took her small hand and walked quickly to the nearest gate counter. An airline employee looked up. "I found this little girl," David explained. "She's lost. Her mother's name is Sarah, and she went to the bathroom and ... double." Quotes before he could finish, the employee's face lit up with relief. "Oh, thank God. Sarah Chun has been looking for you. She's at gate 38. "Come with me, sweetheart Chun," David said, a strange coincidence crossing his mind. "That's my last name, too." "What are the odds?" The employee just smiled. "It's a common name." She radioed down to gate 38, letting them know the girl had been found. David glanced at his watch again. 11:54 a.m. 1 minute until boarding started. His gate was still 5 gates away. "Thank you for stopping," the employee said to him. Most people would have kept walking. "I almost did," he admitted. "I have a flight... ... Then she insisted. "We've got her. Thank you." And David ran. He sprinted through the terminal, his carry-on banging against his leg, his heart pounding in his chest. He checked his watch as he skidded to a halt at gate 47B. 11:56. The gate area was deserted. The door to the jet bridge was closed. "Wait," he shouted, breathless, to the gate agent. "I'm here. I'm on this flight." The agent gave him a look of practiced sympathy, a look he already knew meant bad news. "I'm sorry, sir." The door closed at 11:55. "The flight is preparing for pushback." Desperation clawed at him. but I'm here now. It's only been a minute. You don't understand. I have a meeting in San Francisco at 4. It's critical. My entire company depends on this meeting. The agent's face didn't change. Once the door closes, we can't reopen it. FAA regulations. I'm sorry. The words hit David like a physical blow. The next flight to San Francisco departs at 2:40 p.m. That would be too late. The investors were flying out that night. This was their only shot. He wanted to scream, to throw his laptop, to somehow force his way onto that plane. But it was over. He'd missed his flight, all because he'd stopped to help a lost child. Defeated, he mumbled. Can you rebook me? As the agent typed, he pulled out his phone to make the call he was dreading. Jessica, his business partner, answered on the first ring. Please, tell me you're on the plane, she said, her voice tight with anxiety. I missed it, he confessed. I'm on the 2:40 flight. I won't get there until after 5. The silence on the other end was heavy. Then her voice, sharp and cold, cut through. David, the meeting is at 4. We can't reschedule. If we miss this meeting, we miss our funding. The company's done. I know. I'm sorry. There was a lost kid and I stopped to help and you stopped to help a lost kid. Her disbelief turned to fury. Are you serious? We've been working toward this for 6 months. Everything depends on it. And you stopped for some random kid? She was 4 years old and terrified ASOD bike. What was I supposed to do? Keep walking. Let airport staff handle it. Get to your flight. That determines whether we have a company or not. Jessica, I couldn't just... I don't want to hear it. She cut him off. We're done, David. Without this funding, we're dead. And you killed us to play hero for 5 minutes. The line went dead. David stood there, phone in his hand, feeling the world crumble around him. 6 months of work, his savings, Jessica's savings, ... All of it, gone. He should have kept walking. He should have been selfish. He should have prioritized his own future over a stranger's child. But he hadn't. And now he had lost everything. The gate agent handed him a new boarding pass. You're all set on the 2:40 flight. Same gate, actually. Great. Thanks, he said. The word tasting like ash in his mouth. He trudged away and collapsed into a chair in an empty seating area. It was 11:58 a.m. He had nearly 3 hours to sit with the fact that he'd single-handedly destroyed his career, his company, and his friendship with Jessica. He pulled out his laptop, thinking he should at least email the investors, to apologize, to explain, to beg. It was a long shot, but what else could he do? He was drowning in regret, replaying the last 10 minutes over and over, wishing he could turn back time and just keep walking past that little girl. Then, a sound pierced through his misery. A scream, then another, and another. Multiple people, all at once, screaming in pure horror. David looked up. Travelers were pointing, their faces pale, at a large TV screen mounted on the wall. It was CNN, showing live breaking news. The footage was shaky and horrifying. An airplane. His mind registered vaguely. An airplane engulfed in a massive ball of fire, falling from the sky. A trail of black smoke and debris followed it down like a funeral shroud. His heart stopped. He felt the blood turn to ice in his veins as he read the chyron at the bottom of the screen. Breaking. United Flight 2847 experiences. Catastrophic failure shortly after takeoff from Denver. United Flight 2847. That was his flight. The flight he had just missed. The flight that was supposed to carry him to his future, to his crucial meeting, to the culmination of his dreams. The flight that was now a fireball, plummeting from the sky on national television. He stared at the screen. The boarding pass for the 2:40 flight clutched in his hand, a flimsy piece of paper that had just become the most important thing he owned. The weight of his failure moments ago was suddenly replaced by a chilling, hollow understanding. He had lost his company, but he had just been given back his life, and it was all because he stopped to help a lost little girl named Chun. the same last name as his. What were the odds? David couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't even begin to process what he was seeing on the airport TV. The footage was playing on a horrifying loop, the plane erupting in a fiery explosion near the tail, the aircraft shuddering, then breaking apart in midair. Pieces of metal, seats, and lives tumbling toward the earth. Smoke and fire painted a chaotic mural against the clear Colorado sky. The news anchor's voice was a grim monotone, approximately 8 minutes after takeoff from Denver International Airport. Early reports suggest a possible engine failure or explosion. We have no confirmation yet on casualties, but given the catastrophic nature of the incident, the rest of the words were drowned out by the noise around him. Travelers were crying, gasping, frantically calling loved ones. Someone was praying out loud. A man nearby was being sicked into a trash can. David just stared at the screen. He stared at the very plane that should have been carrying him thousands of feet in the air, at the flames and smoke that would have been his end. He'd missed that flight. B1 minute 60 seconds, all because he'd stopped to help a lost little girl. If he hadn't stopped, if he'd kept running, ignoring the crying child, if he'd gotten to the gate at 11:54 instead of 11:56, he'd be on that plane. He'd be part of that falling debris. He'd be dead, sir. Sir, are you okay? A gate agent, different one from before, was gently touching his arm. You look like you're in shock. That was my flight. David's voice sounded foreign, distant, like it belonged to someone else. I was supposed to be on that plane. I missed it by 1 minute. The agent's face went white. Oh my God. Yumi said it. I stopped to help a lost kid. That's why I missed it. If I hadn't stopped, I'd be dead right now. You need to sit down. You're in shock. I am sitting down. Right? Sorry. Do you need medical attention? I don't know. I don't know what I need. The agent sank into the seat next to him. Around them, the organized hum of the airport had dissolved into pure chaos. Flights were being grounded. Passengers were panicking. Announcements crackled over the intercom, talking about delays and cancellations as the entire airport shifted into emergency mode. Then his phone rang. Jessica. His girlfriend. He answered, his hand feeling numb and disconnected. David, oh my God, are you watching the news? Your flight. I know, he managed to say. You were supposed to be on that plane. You should be. She couldn't finish the sentence, her voice breaking into sobs. You're alive because you stopped to help that kid. Because you missed your flight. David, you're alive. Yeah, it was a single, empty word. The meeting doesn't matter. The company doesn't matter. Nothing matters. You're alive. I would have been on that plane, Jess. I would have been dead. Everyone on that plane is dead. But you're not, she insisted, her voice thick with tears and relief. You're okay. Where are you? Are you still at the airport? Yeah. They're grounding all the flights. I don't know when I'll be able to leave. It doesn't matter. Stay safe, call me when you know more. David. I'm so sorry for what I said earlier about you stopping to help. You saved your own life by doing that. I know. I need to go. I need to. He trailed off. I don't know what I need. He hung up the phone and his gaze was pulled back to the television. The footage had been updated. Now, they were showing aerial shots of the crash site, a vast field northeast of the airport, scarred with burning wreckage. Emergency vehicles, like tiny toys, were racing towards the scene. The news anchor's voice had grown even more grave. No survivors are expected given the nature of the crash. United Airlines has now confirmed that Flight 2847 was carrying 179 passengers and 6 crew members. We're working to get more information. 185 people dead because of a mechanical failure or an explosion or whatever horror had pulled that plane from the sky. David should have been number 186, but he wasn't. Because a 4-year-old Girl got distracted by a puppy and wandered away from her mom. The sheer randomness of it was staggering. A punch to the gut. If that child had just stayed put, if her mother had been watching a little more closely, if David had made the choice to just keep running for his gate, if the security line had moved just a little faster, if any single thing had been different by just 1 minute, he'd be dead. Mr. Chun. A new voice cut through his daze. A man in a dark suit with an official-looking badge clipped to his jacket. I'm Agent Rodriguez with the FBI. I understand you were ticketed on United 2847. Yes. I missed it by 1 minute. I need to ask you some questions. It is just routine re-interviewing everyone who was supposed to be on the flight but was yet to MI a suspect. David's mind felt sluggish, struggling to keep up. You think I... What? Sabotage the plane? No, sir. Not at all. But we need to build a complete picture of who was supposed to be on that flight and why they were UN. It's a standard part of our investigation. Can you please tell me why you missed your flight? So David explained it all. The long TSA line, the desperate sprint through the crowded terminal. And then, the lost child. He recounted the 1 minute delay that had impossibly saved his life. Agent Rodriguez took meticulous notes. His expression unreadable. This child you helped you happen to know her name? No. I didn't get it. But the gate agent who reunited her with her mother mentioned the mom's name was Sarah Chun. Same last name as me, just a coincidence. They were at gate 38. And you stopped to help her, even though you knew it meant you would likely miss your flight. Yes. She was just 4 years old. She was lost and completely terrified. I couldn't just leave her there crying. Agent Rodriguez looked up from his notepad, a flicker of something human in his professional gaze. That's very admirable, Mr. Chun. And it saved your life. The agent's words hung in the air, a stark and unbelievable truth in the middle of all the chaos. It saved his life. A simple act of kindness, a moment of human connection, had become the thread that separated him from the fate of 185 other souls. It was alive. By just 60 seconds. I can't process it. That helping a kid for 5 minutes is the reason I'm alive right now. Agent Rodriguez from the FBI looked at me with a practiced, sympathetic expression. He said, survivor's guilt is common in situations like this, that I should talk to a counselor, that the airport had them available. But I don't need a counselor. I need to understand why that plane exploded. Was it terrorism? A mechanical failure? What happened? Agent Rodriguez just repeated that they were still investigating, that it was too early to say. After I left, I just sat there, in the same airport seating area, watching the news coverage on the giant screens. More and more details started to emerge. Witnesses described a massive explosion in the rear of the plane, just 8 minutes after takeoff. The explosion had severed the tail, causing catastrophic structural failure. The entire aircraft broke apart in midair. Debris was scattered over a 2-mile area, and the words that kept repeating, like a drumbeat of doom. No survivors. All 185 people on board were gone. The NTSB was investigating. The FBI was investigating. United Airlines had grounded its entire fleet of that aircraft type. And me, David Chun, who should have been passenger number 186, sat in the Denver airport, alive. Alive only because I'd stopped to help a lost child find her mom. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. It was a constant stream of texts and calls from friends, family, colleagues, everyone who knew my flight schedule and had seen the horrifying news. My parents were frantic. My sister was crying on the phone. My old college roommate was just in shock. I responded to each one mechanically, with the same 3 short sentences. I'm okay. I missed the flight. I'm safe. But I didn't feel safe. I felt like I was in shock. Like reality itself had fractured and I was living in some bizarre alternate timeline where I was uneven supposed to exist. Hours went. But the airport was chaos. Flights were slowly, cautiously resuming. But the atmosphere was just wrong. It was heavy, thick with grief and fear and trauma. You could feel it in the air. At 4 in the afternoon, my phone rang again. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but for some reason, I answered. Hello? A woman's voice, shaky and emotional, came through the speaker. Is this David Chun? Yes, I said. This is Sarah Chun. I'm the mother of the little girl you helped today. Emma. You found her when she was lost. Oh, right. Is she okay? She's fine, Sarah said. She's right here with me. We're still at the airport. Mr. Chun, I wanted to thank you for stopping, for helping her. I was terrified when I couldn't find her. It was nothing, I said. The words feeling hollow. I'm glad she's okay. It's not nothing, she insisted. I saw what happened. The plane you were supposed to be on, you missed it because you stopped to help Emma. You saved your own life by helping my daughter. Yeah, I breathed out. I guess I did. There was a pause, and then her voice dropped, becoming more urgent. Mr. Chun, I need to tell you something. It's going to sound strange. But can we meet in person? There's something you need to know about why Emma got lost. About us. About us. I was completely lost. I don't understand. Please, she pleaded. Can you meet me? I'm at the United Customer Service Desk in Terminal C, please. It's important. I had no idea what to say. This woman was a total stranger. Our only connection was 5 minutes of chaos involving her daughter. But there was something in her voice and urgency mixed with what sounded like guilt that made me agree against my better judgment. Okay? I'll be there in 10 minutes. Thank you, she said, her relief palpable. And Mr. Chun, I'm so glad you're alive. Sarah Chun was in her late 30s, with a professional look about her, but her eyes were re-dimmed from crying. Emma, the little girl I'd helped, was sitting next to her, completely absorbed in a coloring book, oblivious to the gravity of the day. Sarah stood up as I approached. Mr. Chun? Thank you for coming. Please, call me David, I said. What did you need to tell me? Sarah glanced over at Emma. Tin bake me. Can we talk somewhere more private? The Admiral's Club Lounge. I'm a member. We can go there. Sure, I agreed, my curiosity now fully piqued. We walked to the lounge, with little Emma skipping ahead of us. Once we found a quiet corner and were settled, Sarah took a deep, shuddering breath. I don't know how to say this, she began, so I'm just going to say it. I'm glad you're alive. I am so grateful you stopped to help Emma. But I need to tell you why Emma got lost. Why she wandered away from me. She said she saw a puppy, I recalled. That's what she told you, Sarah said, her eyes fixed on me. But that's not the whole truth. She looked over at Emma, who was now several feet away, still coloring happily. Emma wandered off because I was having a panic attack. Because I saw your name on my phone and it triggered something I've been dealing with for 32 years. My name. How do you know my name? Because I've been looking for you. For years. David Chun, born in Denver in 1988. Only child. Parents, Michael and Helen Chun. Is that you? A chill ran down my spine, cold and sharp. Every detail was correct. Yes. How do you know all that? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She looked at me, her expression a mix of pain, relief, and something I couldn't quite decipher. She took another shaky breath, and the words she said next shattered the fragile reality I was clinging to. Because I'm your sister. The world just seemed to stop. I stared at her, completely unable to process what she'd just said. What? No. I don't have a sister. I'm an only child. That's what I told her, but she just looked at me calmly and said, You had a sister. Me. My name is Sarah Chun. I was born in Denver in 1986. I was 2 years old when the Chun family in California adopted me. You were just 6 months old when your parents now adopted you. We were separated, put with different families. But David, we're biological siblings. My mind was just spinning. That's impossible. My parents never told me I had a sibling. They never even hinted at it. Sarah shook her head gently. They probably didn't know. The adoption was closed. All the records were sealed. The only reason I know is because I did one of those DNA ancestry tests a couple of years ago, and it matched me with someone who was a full sibling. I've been trying to track you down ever since. But how? How? What happened to our family? Our biological mother died in childbirth, she explained, her voice soft. With you, our father, he couldn't take care of 2 kids by himself. He was struggling with addiction. So, the state took both of us. We were placed for adoption separately. That's all I know. I've tried to find more records, but everything is sealed tight. The only real information I have is from that DNA match and some very basic adoption papers I managed to get. I couldn't speak. My entire life, my whole identity. Only child, adopted as a baby. No biological family connections. It was all just crumbling right there in a sterile airport terminal. Sarah continued, I've been trying to reach you for months, but you don't do social media. Your work email just sends back automated responses. Your phone number is unlisted. I finally found out you were scheduled to speak at a tech conference in San Francisco this week. I was going to try and meet you there. But then, I saw you were booked on the same flight as me today. Flight 2847. I was sitting in row 32. You were supposed to be in row 18. I felt the air leave my lungs. You were on my flight? I was supposed to be? She said. Emma and I both. We were flying to San Francisco to stay with my husband for a bit. He's there for work. But then, Emma got lost, and in the total panic of looking for her, we missed our flight. And then, Sarah's voice broke, and then the plane exploded. I felt like I couldn't breathe. You missed the flight too. Because Emma got lost. Yes, she whispered. Emma wandered off because I was having a massive panic attack right there in the terminal. I had just seen your name on my phone, confirming you were on the flight. I was trying to decide whether I should approach you at the gate, whether I should just walk up and tell you we were siblings. And while I was panicking, Emma just wandered away. By the time I found her, thanks to you, we'd missed the flight. So we both missed the flight. We're both alive because her daughter got lost. Because I had a panic attack about meeting my long-lost brother, Sarah said, as if reading my mind. Because you stopped to help a lost little girl instead of running to your gate. Because of a series of tiny choices and impossible coincidences that kept both of us off a plane that just killed 185 people. We just sat there in a stunned silence, trying to process this absolutely impossible chain of events. TC seemed sane. I finally managed to say it out loud. This can't be real. The odds of any of this, are astronomical. Sarah agreed. But it happened. David, we're siblings, and we both survived today because of each other. I missed a flight because of my panic about you. You missed the flight because you stopped to help Emma. We saved each other's lives without even knowing it. I had to ask, do you have proof that we're siblings? Sarah pulled out her phone, opened a website, and showed me the screen. There it was. A DNA ancestry match. 50% shared DNA. Full siblings. It was irrefutable. It was real. I've been wanting to meet you for so long, she said, and I could see tears welling up in her eyes. I imagined all these different scenarios, how I'd introduce myself, what I'd say. I never, ever imagined it would be like this, that we'd both nearly die, that we'd survive because of a random chance and a small act of kindness. I looked over at Emma, who was still happily coloring in her book, completely unaware of the sheer magnitude of what had just happened. She saved both our lives, I said, the words feeling strange in my mouth. Your daughter, my niece. Sarah nodded, a small, tearful smile on her face. C'est dit, by getting lost at exactly the wrong time, and exactly the right time. Does she know about me? I asked. No. She's only 4. She doesn't really understand about my biological family yet. I've told her I was adopted, but that's as far as we've gotten. What about your adoptive parents? Do they know you found me? They died 5 years ago, she said quietly. Car accident. That's actually what started this whole thing. That's when I decided to search for my biological family. I wanted Emma to have more family connections. I wanted her to understand where she came from. And I wanted to know if I had siblings, if there was anyone else out there. And you found me. I found you, she repeated, and then almost lost you before we ever even met. I didn't know what to feel, relief to be alive. Yes, but also shock at discovering I have a sister. Grief for the 185 people who weren't as lucky, and just utter confusion about what any of this meant for my life now. One more question popped into my head. Can I ask you something? How were you so sure I'd be on that flight? How did you even know I'd be at the airport today? I've been following your company online, she admitted. Your startup. I saw the announcement that you were pitching to investors in San Francisco today. I just guessed you'd be on a morning flight from Denver, so I booked the same flight, hoping for a chance to meet you. I was going to introduce myself at the gate, or on the plane, or maybe even in San Francisco. I hadn't decided, and then I saw you running through the airport and I panicked. So, you've been essentially stalking me, I thought. I said it with a slight smile, and she let out a half-laugh, half-sub. Yeah, a little, but look where it got us. Alive, together. For the first time, I looked at her, at my sister, and I felt something shift. A connection. A new beginning forged in tragedy and unbelievable luck. We had a lifetime to catch up on. A story that was just beginning. And it all started here, in this airport, on the day we were supposed to die. Thank you for listening to our story. If you've ever had a moment that changed your life, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that will make you think. Not stalking. Researching. I was trying to find the right time to make contact. I didn't want to just call you out of the blue and say, "Hi, I'm your sister you never knew about." I wanted it to be, natural. Less shocking. Less shocking than this. Yes. Less shocking than nearly dying and then discovering we were siblings because I had a panic attack and you stopped to help my daughter. Emma wandered over, holding a drawing. Mommy, I made a picture. It's you and me and the nice man who helped me. She held up the drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands. Sarah, Emma, and David. That's beautiful, sweetie. Sarah's voice was thick with emotion. David looked at the drawing, at his niece's interpretation of the day. She had no idea she was drawing her uncle, had no idea she'd saved 2 lives by getting lost, had no idea that the nice man was family. Emma, David said, kneeling down to her level. That's a great picture. Can I keep it? Yes, you can have it because you helped me find Mommy. Thank you. You know what? I think you helped me too, in a really important way. I did. You did. You helped me more than you know. After Emma returned to her coloring, David turned to Sarah. What now? Where do we go from here? I don't know. I never planned past making contact. I imagined we'd meet, talk, maybe develop a relationship over time. I didn't imagine we'd be trauma bonded by surviving a plane crash together. We need to process this, both of us. The crash, the survivor's guilt, finding out we're siblings. It's too much for one day. Agreed. But David, I don't want to lose you now that I've found you. Can we stay in touch? Can we figure this out together? Yes. Absolutely, yes. I have a sister. I have a niece. That's incredible. Even with everything else that happened today, that's incredible. Sarah smiled through her tears. You have more than that. I've 2 other kids at home. You have 3 nieces and nephews total. And a brother. You have a whole family you never knew about. That's overwhelming. I know, but good, overwhelming. right? Yeah. Good, overwhelming. They exchanged contact information. Made plans to talk the next day. They agreed to figure out how to navigate this new relationship slowly, carefully, with the help of counselors and time to process. As David prepared to leave the lounge, Sarah stopped him. "David, can I ask you something? If you hadn't stopped to help Emma, if you'd made your flight, you'd be dead right now. Do you wish you'd kept running?" "Made the flight? No. Even before I knew we were siblings, even when I thought helping Emma had cost me everything, my meeting, my company, my career, I didn't regret stopping. A 4-year-old needed help. That mattered more than a meeting. And now, knowing that stopping to help her saved both our lives, that we're family? No. I don't wish I'd kept running. I'm glad I stopped." "Me too. I'm so glad you stopped." David didn't leave Denver that day, or the next day, or the day after that. The airport gradually returned to normal operations, but David stayed. He checked into a hotel near the airport and spent 3 days processing what had happened, meeting with Sarah and Emma, trying to understand his new reality. The plane crash dominated the news. The NTSB investigation revealed that a manufacturing defect in the engine had caused a catastrophic failure. A microscopic crack in a turbine blade had expanded during flight, leading to an explosion that severed hydraulic lines and damaged the tail section. The plane had been doomed the moment that engine exploded. 185 people were dead. Their names were released gradually. Their faces appeared on news coverage. Stories of who they were, who they'd left behind, what their deaths meant. David read every story, felt the weight of each life lost. Survivor's guilt was crushing him. Why had he lived when so many others had died? What made him special? What gave him the right to survive? He met with a trauma counselor recommended by the airport. He tried to process his feelings. "It's normal to feel guilty," the counselor said, "to question why you survived. But Davy, your survival wasn't random. You made a choice to help a child. That choice saved your life. You have to accept that and find meaning in it." How do I find meaning in 185 people dying while I live? Believe in, well, by honoring their deaths through how you live your life going forward. I survived for a reason. And I have to find that reason. I've been spending all my time with Sarah, my sister, the sister I never knew I had until a few days ago. We meet wherever we can, coffee shops, the hotel, her sister-in-law's house where she's staying. She's been telling me about our biological parents. Our mother, Rebecca Martinez, died giving birth to me. A massive hemorrhage, an emergency C-section. Tessa bathed me, but they couldn't save her. She was only 20. Our father, James Martinez, was already struggling with alcoholism. After Rebecca's death, he just fell apart. He couldn't handle a 2-year-old Sarah and a newborn baby. The state stepped in, and we were both put into foster care, then adopted by different families. Sarah told me she's tried to find him, our father, James Martinez, but there's almost nothing. He vanished from the records after we were taken away. We don't know if he's alive or dead, if he ever got sober, or if he ever thought about us. When she asked if I wanted to find him, I wasn't sure what to say. Part of him adoes, but another part is angry. He chose alcohol over us. But then, I think about what he was going through, grieving, struggling. Maybe he really did do the best he could at the time. And our mother, Rebecca. Sarah doesn't remember her either. She was too young. All she has is a name and a few photos from the adoption agency. She showed them to me on her phone. A beautiful young woman with dark hair and a warm smile, Rebecca Martinez, my mother. The woman who died so I could live. It hit me then. A strange ache for a woman I never knew. She's beautiful, I managed to say. So young, Sarah replied. She never got to see us grow up. She paused, then added, she died, bringing you into the world and leaving me without a mother. I had to ask, does that make you angry? At me. She looked shocked. What? No, David, it wasn't your fault. Birth complications happen. You didn't ask to be born. But I can't shake the feeling. But I'm the reason she's dead, I said. No, she insisted. Medical complications are the reason. You were just a baby. Please don't carry guilt for that. But I do. I feel so much guilt. For my mother's death, for surviving the plane crash when 185 other people didn't. It's becoming overwhelming. I called Jessica, my co-founder, and told her everything. That I wasn't coming back to San Francisco, that I was withdrawing from our company. Primera need, time. She was worried, told me I was in shock and shouldn't make big life decisions. But I just can't focus on work. Not after this. Everything that seemed so important just 3 days ago. It feels meaningless now. Almost. I can't just go back to pitching investors and building apps like nothing happened. I told her I didn't know what I was going to do, but I couldn't do this anymore. I apologized for leaving her in a tough spot. She said she was more worried about me than the company. Are you okay? Really? She asked. The truth came pouring out. No, I'm not okay. I'm alive when I shouldn't be. I have a sister I never knew. I watched 185 people die. I'm the opposite of... Okay. She urged me to get help, to see a therapist, and to not make any permanent decisions while I was in crisis. I told her I'd try, but that I wasn't coming back. Not right now. Maybe not ever. After that call, I just sat in my hotel room and broke down. For the first time since it happened, I let myself feel it all. The grief, the guilt, the confusion, the gut-wrenching sense that my life is irrevocably changed. I cried for the 185 people who died, for their families, for the sheer randomness of it all. I cried for my mother Rebecca, who died bringing me into the world, for my father James, who was too broken to raise me, for the life I thought I had, the lie I was living. I cried until I was empty. Then I called Sarah. Can I come over? I need to be with family. She just said, of course, come now. When I got to her sister-in-law's house, she opened the door, took one look at my face, and just hugged me. I'm not okay, I whispered. I know, she said. Neither am I, but we'll figure it out together. We sat on the couch, two strangers just 3 days ago, now siblings bound by trauma and blood. I keep thinking about the odds, I told her, of me finding that little girl, Emma, of you being on the same flight, of both of us missing it, of finding out we're siblings. The odds are astronomical. She nodded. I know. I've been thinking about that too. Is it fate? Coincidence? Divine intervention? Or just chaos? I don't know what to believe. My entire life has been turned upside down in 3 days. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about what matters, about who I am met. All different. She told me she'd been looking for me for 2 years, imagining how we'd meet 1,000 different ways, but never like this. Never in the aftermath of mass death. We're both lost, both grappling with this impossible new reality. We survived, and now we have to figure out what that means. We have to figure out how to live with the weight of it, and how to live for the 185 people who didn't. This is just the beginning of a long, confusing journey, but at least now, I don't have to walk it alone. I have a sister, and together, we'll find our way through. Thanks for following our story. We'll be back soon. Emma came into the room, holding a small, worn, stuffed animal. She looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes. Uncle David, are you sad? I glanced over at Sarah, my sister, a sister I hadn't known existed until a week ago. You told her? This afternoon, Sarah confirmed, her voice soft, that you're my brother. Her uncle. She's been calling you Uncle David ever since. Uncle David, I repeated the words, letting them sink in. The weight of that title felt immense, a connection to a world I never knew was mine. I had a family. I had a niece. This tiny, wonderful person was connected to me. I looked back at Emma. Yes, Emma. I'm sad. A lot of people. They died. And I'm trying to understand why I didn't. Emma tilted her head, her logic simple and unshakable. Because you stopped to help me, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. You're a helper. Helpers don't die. A lump formed in my throat. I wish that were true, sweetheart. It is true, she insisted. Mommy said you helped me and that's why you're alive. And I'm glad you're alive because now I have an uncle. Tears pricked my eyes again, blurring the little girl in front of me. I'm glad I'm alive too, I managed to say. And I'm so glad I have you as my niece. Emma brightened and scrambled onto the couch next to me, her small body a warm, comforting presence. Do you want to watch a movie? Movies make people feel better when they're sad. Okay, I agreed, a small smile touching my lips. What should we watch? Frozen, she declared, with absolute certainty. It's about sisters who love each other even when they're apart. I saw Sarah wipe a tear from her own eye, a sad smile on her face. That's surprisingly appropriate. She laughed softly, and so we watched Frozen. Me, Sarah, and Emma. A found family, stitched together by tragedy and the thinnest thread of chance, trying to make sense of survival. Just 1 week after the crash, a memorial service was held in Denver for the victims of Flight 2847. I went with Sarah and Emma. Thousands of people filled the park. The families of those lost, a few other survivors who, for one reason or another, had missed the flight, airline employees, first responders, and just people from the community who wanted to show their support. The governor spoke. Clergy from different faiths offered prayers. Then, the reading of the names began. 185 victims. Each name was spoken aloud, a somber tribute, an acknowledgement that each one was a life, a story, now gone. I listened to every single name, committing them to memory. I felt this crushing responsibility to remember them, because I was here and they were not. After the ceremony, as the crowd began to slowly disperse, my eyes landed on a woman clutching a framed photograph of a young man with a bright, hopeful smile. I felt compelled to approach her. I'm so sorry for your loss, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Was he your son? She nodded, her gaze fixed on the photos. Yes. Tyler. He was 23. He was flying to San Francisco for a job interview. His first real job out of college. He was so excited. Her composure finally broke, and tears streamed down her face. I told him to be careful, to have a safe flight. Those were the last words I said to him. I'm so sorry, I said again, the words feeling hollow. I was supposed to be on that flight. I missed it. The woman's head snapped up. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. It was a storm of pain, anger, and maybe even envy. You missed it, she repeated, her voice flat. So you're alive and my son is dead. The air was sucked from my lungs. I'm sorry. I know that's not fair. No, it's not, she agreed, her voice thick with grief. But life isn't fair. Random chance isn't fair. You survived. Tyler didn't. I have to live with that. A question formed on my lips before I could stop it. What was he like, Tyler? Her face softened, just for a moment, as she looked back at his picture. Kind. Funny. Smart. He wanted to work in software development. Had a job offer from a startup in San Francisco. This was supposed to be the start of his career. Instead, it was the end of his life. It felt like a physical blow, a punch to the gut. Tyler was going to San Francisco for the same reason I was. A tech job. A future. Dreams that had been incinerated in that explosion. He was just like me. I'm sorry, I choked out, the words utterly inadequate. They couldn't change a thing. Her eyes searched mine. Why did you miss the flight? I stopped to help a lost child, I explained. It made me late. You stopped to help someone. The hardness in her expression softened a little more. Tyler would have done the same. He was always helping people, always putting others first. She paused, her gaze distant. Maybe you survived because you're like that too. Because the world needs people who stop to help. I don't deserve to survive more than Tyler did, I confessed, the guilt of physical weight in my chest. No one deserves to survive more than anyone else, she said, her voice firm. But you did survive. So what will you do with that? Will you waste it feeling guilty, or will you live a life that honors the people who died? I don't know how, I admitted, feeling completely lost. Figure it out, she said, her voice a command born from a mother's deepest pain. Because my son doesn't get a future, you do. Make it count. She turned and walked away, disappearing back into the sea of mourners, leaving me standing alone. Her words echoed in my head, heavier than any luggage I could ever carry. The weight of her grief, the weight of her challenge. Sarah found me a few minutes later, her expression full of concern. You okay? I could only shake my head. I talked to a victim's mother. Her son, Tyler, died. He was 23, going to a job interview in San Francisco. Same reason I was going, and he died while I lived. David, you can't, she started, but I knew what she was going to say, that I couldn't blame myself, that it wasn't my fault. But Tyler's mother didn't tell me not to feel guilty. She told me to do something with it, to make my survival mean something. Standing there, in the middle of that field of sorrow, I knew I had to try. For Tyler, for all 185 names I had just heard, for my new family. I had a future, they didn't, and I had to figure out how to make it count. Thank you for listening. If you or someone you know is struggling with grief or trauma, please remember that help is available. You can reach out to crisis hotlines or mental health professionals. You don't have to go through it alone. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. I know I can't change it. I can't undo it. I can't make it fair. But I can acknowledge it. I can carry the weight of knowing that my survival meant someone else's death in some cosmic balance. I do understand. That's not how it works. Your survival didn't cause anyone's death. I know. Logically, I know that. But emotionally, I feel responsible. I feel like I owe something to the people who died. I just don't know what. Over the next few weeks, David began to understand what he owed. It wasn't a debt of guilt, but a duty of remembrance. He started reaching out to the families of the victims from the crash. He offered to listen to their stories, to hear about their loved ones, to carry their names and faces with him. A living memorial to those who were lost. Some families welcomed his contact. They appreciated having someone who was there. Someone who almost died on that same flight, willing to remember the people they lost. His survival, for them, was a link to their loved ones' final moments, a connection they desperately needed. Others, however, rejected him. They couldn't separate his survival from their loved one's death. For them, he was a painful reminder of what they'd lost, a living symbol of an unfair fate. David accepted both responses with grace. He understood that grief was a complicated, messy thing. There was no right or wrong way to feel. While David navigated this path of remembrance, he and Sarah also decided it was time to confront another part of their past. Their biological family. They hired a private investigator to search for James Martinez, their biological father, the man who had given them up so many years ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since the crash, but it had only been 3 months. Then, the investigator called. He'd found him. James Martinez was alive, 58 years old, living in a sober living facility in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He'd been clean for 7 years after a long, brutal battle with alcoholism and homelessness. He was working as a janitor, attending AA meetings regularly, and trying to piece together a life from the wreckage of his addiction. The investigator asked them the big question, do you want to contact him? I can arrange it. David and Sarah sat across from each other in a small coffee shop, the investigator's words hanging in the air between them. I'm angry at him, Sarah admitted, her voice low. I'm angry for giving us up, for choosing addiction over his own children, for never even trying to find us. David nodded, stirring his coffee. But he was grieving, and he was sick. Addiction is a disease, Sarah. I know that, she replied, a flash of frustration in her eyes. Logically, I get it. But that doesn't make me less angry. It doesn't make the hurt go away. He couldn't be a father to us. David took a sip, letting the silence settle. So what do we do? Do we reach out or not? Sarah stared out the window for a long moment, watching people walk by, living their own complicated lives. Let's meet him, she said finally, turning back to David. Just once. Let's hear his story from his own mouth. After that, we can decide if we want any kind of relationship. So, they made the call. Through the investigator, they arranged to meet James in Albuquerque the following week. The man who met them looked much older than 58. Life had clearly been hard on him, etching deep lines onto his face. But his eyes were clear. They were sober, and the moment he saw Sarah and David walking towards him, those clear eyes filled with tears, and he began to cry, his body shaking with emotion. Sarah, David, my children. Is it really you? His voice was thick, choked with disbelief. It's us, Sarah said, her own voice tight, struggling to keep her composure. James took a step closer, his hands trembling. I never thought I'd see you again. I never thought you'd want to see me. Not after what I did, after I failed you so completely. They found a quiet bench in a nearby park. The three of them, James, Sarah, and David, sat. Together, a trio connected by blood, separated by tragedy, and finally reunited by a search for answers. The years of separation felt like a vast canyon between them. David was the first to speak, breaking the heavy silence. Tell us what happened, he sighed gently. After Mom died. After we were taken away. Tell us your story. And so, James began to talk. He told them everything. He spoke of Rebecca, their mother, and how her sudden death had completely destroyed him. He confessed that he couldn't even look at baby David without seeing his wife dying, a constant, agonizing reminder of his loss. He talked about how the drinking, which had been a problem before, spiraled out of control. He described the pain of losing custody of both of them, of descending into decades of addiction, homelessness, and one failed recovery attempt after another. I thought about you every single day, he said, his voice raw with a pain that was decades old. I wondered where you were. Who raised you? If you were happy, but I never looked for you, because I didn't believe I deserved to know. I'd failed you so completely, premedicate you up. I let the addiction win. I didn't have the right to be in your lives. Sarah's voice was sharp when she replied, You're our father. You had the right? James shook his head, his gaze fixed on the ground. No. I was a sperm donor. A biological connection. I was never a father. I never got to be a father, and that's my fault. It was my choice, my failure. David, ever the observer, pointed out. But you're sober now. 7 years. That's impressive. A flicker of something, maybe pride, crossed James's face. 7 years, 2 months, and 14 days. I count every one. Sobriety is the only thing I have ever done right in my entire life. It's the only thing I'm proud of. The anger Sarah had been holding back finally broke through. We have questions, she said, her voice stronger now. Questions about Mom, about our early years, about the adoption. Can you answer them? James looked up, meeting her eyes directly for the first time. I'll answer anything you want to know. I owe you that much. I owe you everything. They talked for hours, sitting on that park bench as the sun moved across the sky. He told them about Rebecca, who she was, how they met, what she was like as a person, filling in the ghost of a mother they never knew. He painted a picture of Sarah as a toddler, curious, full of energy, and deeply attached to her mom. And then he spoke about the most painful decision of his life, giving them up for adoption. He explained that it wasn't an act of abandonment, but an act of love. I knew I couldn't take care of you, he explained, his voice breaking. I was drinking all day long. I could barely take care of myself. You deserved so much better. You deserved families who could love you and raise you properly. So I signed the papers. I let you go. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most loving. I let you have better lives, even though it meant losing you forever. Did you ever try to find us? David asked, the question hanging in the air. No, James admitted, his voice barely a whisper. I was afraid. I was so afraid that you'd hate me. I was afraid that seeing me, Seeing what I had become would only hurt you more. So I stayed away. I let you have your lives without my failures contaminating them. But Sarah's anger hadn't disappeared. It had just found a new focus. "But we needed you," she said, the words sharp with years of unspoken hurt. "I needed to know where I came from. I needed to understand my biological family. You robbed me of that by never reaching out." James didn't defend himself. I just nodded, accepting her words. "I know. And I am so sorry. I thought I was protecting you from me, but I understand now how selfish that was. You deserve to have the choice. I am so sorry." They left Albuquerque later that week with more questions than answers. Their feelings about James were a tangled mess of anger, pity, and a flicker of something else. Something undefined. There was no clear path forward, no easy decision about whether this man, their biological father, would be a part of their future. But they had met him. They had heard his story. They finally began to understand where they came from. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. 6 months after the crash, David was still in Denver. He'd let his apartment in San Francisco go, sold his stake in the startup he'd and moved permanently to be near his sister, Sarah, and her family. The city held a strange mix of trauma and solace for him. He'd started seeing a grief counselor, trying to untangle the knots of trauma and survivor's guilt that choked his thoughts daily. He was learning, slowly, how to just live with it, how to find some sliver of meaning in his survival. He also started volunteering. He connected with families of the other victims, joined trauma support groups, and worked with organizations helping people navigate the shock of unexpected loss. It was a way to feel useful, to channel the overwhelming feelings into something constructive. "You're channeling your guilt into service," his counselor observed one session. "That's healthy. But David, at some point, you need to forgive yourself for surviving. You can't spend your whole life atoning for being alive." "How do I forgive myself when 185 people died?" he asked, the number a permanent weight in his chest. "By accepting that you didn't cause their deaths," she said gently. "That your survival was random chance. That you deserve to be alive just as much as anyone else did. I don't feel like I deserve it." "That's the guilt talking," she countered. "But David, you stopped to help a child. That's who you are. Someone who helps. The world needs people like that. Your survival means one more helper in the world, and that matters." A significant part of his new life was his niece, Emma. He and the 4-year-old had become inseparable. They had the weekly uncle-niece days, filled with trips to parks, museums, and movie theaters. Emma was too young to grasp the true magnitude of what had happened. Had her getting lost in the airport that day had saved not one, but 2 lives. But she understood that David was family, and that was all that mattered to her. One sunny afternoon at the zoo, while watching the monkeys, she turned to him with a serious expression. "Uncle David, why are you always sad?" He was taken aback. "I'm not always sad." "Yes, you are," she insisted. "Even when you smile, your eyes are sad. Mommy says you're dealing with big feelings." He managed a small smile. "Your mommy is very smart. I am dealing with big feelings." "What kind of feelings?" she asked, her curiosity genuine. He took a breath, trying to explain it to a 4-year-old. "Sad feelings about the people who died. Confused feelings about why I didn't die. And grateful feelings. Grateful that I'm alive to spend time with you." "I'm glad you're alive too," she said, wrapping her small arms around his leg. "You're my favorite uncle. I'm your only uncle," he pointed out. "That's why you're my favorite. It's math." David laughed. It was a real, genuine laugh, the first one he could remember in months. It bubbled up from deep inside, surprising him. Emma had that effect on him, pulling him out of the darkness just by being a silly, wonderful kid. "You're right," he said, his voice lighter. "It is math. And you're my favorite niece. I'm your only niece." She giggled. "Exactly. Math." Sarah had noticed the change in her brother. "Emma's good for you," she told him one evening. "She makes you less heavy." "She does," David agreed. watching his niece chase fireflies in the backyard. She reminds me that life continues, that there's joy even after tragedy, that kids are resilient, and maybe I can be too. How are you doing? Really? She asked, her voice soft. He considered the question honestly. Better. Not good, but better. I'm sleeping through the night again, having fewer nightmares. I'm starting to believe I deserve to be alive. You do deserve it, David, Sarah said firmly, placing a hand on his arm. You deserve to be happy, to build a new life, to move forward. I'm trying. It's just hard when I think about how close I came, about all the people who didn't make it. The randomness of it all is terrifying. Life is random, she agreed. Tragic and beautiful and completely random. You can't control it. You can only choose how you respond to it. He looked at her. And how am I responding? She smiled, a proud, warm smile. Beautifully. Beautifully. You're volunteering. You're building relationships. You're being present for Emma. You're doing the hard work of healing. I'm so proud of you. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And Sarah, I'm so glad we found each other. Glad we're family, even if the circumstances were terrible. I'm grateful for you. Same, she replied. I looked for you for 2 years. I almost gave up. And then we literally saved each other's lives without even knowing it. If that's not meant to be, I don't know what is. 1 year after the crash, a memorial was held. David attended with Sarah and Emma. Also attending was James, their biological father. Over the past 6 months, David and Sarah had cautiously built a relationship with him. It started with weekly phone calls, then monthly visits. It wasn't a traditional father-child relationship. Too much time had passed. Too much damage had been done. He thought about the past year, the suffocating grief, the flicker of hope, the unexpected gift of family. He took a deep breath and began to share his story. 1 year ago, I missed flight to 847. B, 1 minute. I was supposed to die that day. 185 people did die, and I've spent the last year trying to understand why I'm alive while they're not. I don't have an answer. There is no answer. Survival was random. Death was random. The only difference between me and the victims was 60 seconds and the choice to help a lost child. What I've learned is that survival comes with responsibility. Not because I'm better or more deserving than the people who died, but because I have the gift of time they don't have. I have years ahead of me that they'll never get, and I owe it to them to use that time well. I owe it to Tyler, who was 23 and going to a job interview. To Sandra, who was 42 and flying home to see her children. To Michael, who was 65 and retired, going to visit his grandchildren. To all 185 people whose lives were cut short. I owe them a life well lived, a life of service and compassion and love, a life that honors their deaths by making their final day meaningful. By ensuring that at least one person survived to do good in the world. That's what I've committed to. That's my promise to the victims. I will live a life worthy of this second chance. I will help people. I will be present. I will love my family. I will make sure that my survival means something beyond just lucky timing. To the families here today, I'm sorry. Sorry for your loss. Sorry that I'm alive while your loved ones aren't. Sorry that life is unfair and random and cruel. I carry your loved ones with me. I remember their names, their faces, their stories. They're part of me now. Part of why I'm trying to be better. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you for sharing your loved ones with me. Thank you for accepting my survival even when it must be painful to see me alive. I promise to honor that acceptance, by living well. After I gave that speech at the memorial, Tyler's mother approached me. She was the same woman I'd spoken to at the first memorial, just a year before. She told me it was a beautiful speech, and that her son, Tyler, would have liked me. Her words meant the world. I told her how I'd thought about Tyler a lot that year, about all the victims, but especially him, since we were both flying to San Francisco for similar reasons. Then she said something I'll never forget. She said she wasn't angry anymore. Not at me for surviving. She admitted that at first, it just felt so unfair, but she'd realized it wasn't my fault. I didn't cause Tyler's death. I just happened to survive. And the fact that I'd spent the year trying to honor the dead, that meant something to her. The relief I felt was immense. She then told me about the job offer Tyler was flying out for. The company had reached out to her after the crash. They wanted to create a scholarship in Tyler's name for young developers entering the field. And then she asked if I would help her set it up. Since I'm in tech, she thought I could help navigate that world for her. I was floored. Of course, I said yes. I would be honored to create something meaningful in Tyler's name. Over the next few months, I worked closely with Tyler's mother to establish the Tyler Harrison Memorial Scholarship. It wasn't just about funding. We built in a mentorship program for young developers, especially those from underserved communities, helping them get a start in the tech field. This became the first of several memorial projects I helped with. I sort of fell into this role as a coordinator, connecting victims' families with resources, helping them establish scholarships and charities. It was a way to make sure that every single person who was lost would be remembered through something positive and lasting. The guilt never fully went away. It's a weight I think I'll always carry, but working on these projects gave the guilt a purpose. It transformed it from something that could crush me into fuel to do good in the world. It was a way to channel that complex, painful emotion into action. Then, 2 years after the crash, I received some unexpected news. The airline had finally reached a settlement with the victims' families. Each family would receive compensation, but then came a question I never anticipated. What about the survivors? The people like me who had missed the flight but still carried the trauma of knowing how close we came to death. The airline decided to offer us compensation as well. Take kind, eat survivor support funds. A check for $50,000 arrived in the mail. I just stared at it. I felt sick. This was money for surviving. It felt so wrong, like I was profiting from the deaths of 185 people. The first person I called was Sarah, the only other person I knew who had also missed the flight. I asked if she'd gotten a check. She had, and she felt the exact same way I did. It felt dirty, like being paid for being lucky. Neither of us wanted it. But then Sarah had an idea. What if we used it for good? We could donate it to the memorial funds we'd been working on, or to charities for the victims. That's exactly what I'd been thinking. Don't keep a cent. Give it all away in memory of the people who died. So that's what we did. We decided to pool our survivor funds together. $100,000 combined. With that money, we created a new foundation. The Flight 2847 Memorial Foundation. It's dedicated to helping the families of aviation accident victims, providing them with grief counseling, financial support, and help with memorial services. It felt like the only right thing to do. It was a way to turn that tainted money into a source of comfort and support for others who would unfortunately face similar tragedies in the future. It's another promise kept. Another way to live a life worthy of the second chance I was given. Living with survivor's guilt is a lifelong journey. There are no easy answers, and the pain of the loss never truly disappears. But what I've learned is that we can choose what we do with our time. We can let grief consume us, or we can use it to build something new, something that honors those we've lost. For anyone struggling with loss or trauma, please know that you are not alone. There are resources that can help, and speaking with a mental health professional can make a significant difference. Your life has meaning, and your story is important. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe for more stories about finding purpose. In the face of adversity, Tohibe back, they recruited James to help run the foundation. He had been searching for a way to contribute, to feel useful to the children he had just rediscovered. Managing the foundation gave him a renewed sense of purpose and a meaningful way to channel his resources. This is important. James declared at their very first board meeting. "We're retaking money that came from an act of survival and using it to support those who have lost their loved ones. There's a redemption in that." David nodded. "That's exactly what we're hoping for. Redemption, meaning a way to truly honor the dead." The foundation started small, but grew quickly. Other survivors from different incidents came forward, wanting to contribute. Local community members heard their story and generously donated. Within just 1 year, they had managed to distribute over $500,000 to the families of aviation accident victims all across the country. David poured his entire being into this work. It became his sole focus, his mission, his very reason for surviving. He had finally found the answer to that haunting question of why he lived it, was to help others navigate the same kind of unimaginable tragedy he had endured. But as he dedicated himself to service, he also began to realize that life had to be more than just atonement. He needed to learn to live beyond his work, to find joy again, to build new relationships. His life couldn't just be about honoring the past. It had to embrace the future. So, he started dating. He met a woman named Maria, who worked at the grief counseling center, where he volunteered. She understood trauma on a profound level. She understood his guilt, his survivor's complex, and why this foundation was so crucial for him. One evening, she looked at him and said, "You know, you're allowed to be happy. You're allowed to have a life that exists beyond the crash." David sighed. "Logically, I know that. But emotionally, ... I still feel like I do undeserved happiness when so many others didn't get that chance." Maria took his hand. "Those people would want you to be happy. They would want you to live fully. They wouldn't want you to spend the rest of your life chained to grief and guilt." "How can you be so sure what they'd want?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Because," she said gently, "that's what we all want for the people we care about. We want the living to live, to find joy, to make the most of every single moment. Your grief doesn't honor them. Your joy does. It proves that life continues, that survival means something more than just breathing." David was still mulling over her words when his niece, Emma, now a bright 6-year-old, asked him a question that completely shifted his perspective. They were building a fortress out of couch cushions when she looked up at him with her big, curious eyes. "Uncle David, are you still sad about the plane?" He paused, surprised by her directness. "Sometimes, sweetie, but not always." "Why do you ask?" "Because if you're always sad, then the bad guys win. Mommy told me that bad things happen, but we can't let them make us sad forever. We have to be happy to show that love is stronger than sad." Tears welled up in David's eyes. He knelt down to her level. "Your mummy is a very wise woman, and you're absolutely right. We can't be sad forever." A huge smile spread across her face. "So ... will you come to my dance recital next week and not be sad? Just be happy." "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I will be there, and I will be happy. I promise." And he kept that promise, sitting in that brightly lit elementary school auditorium, watching a dozen 6-year-olds in tutus perform a slightly clumsy but utterly adorable ballet routine. David felt something inside him fundamentally change. He was happy. Genuinely, purely happy. Watching his niece twirl on stage, holding Maria's hand, sitting next to Sarah and her husband. He felt like he was part of a family. The guilt was still there, a quiet hum in the background, and he knew it probably always would be. But for the first time, it was accompanied by joy and love and hope. He finally understood that surviving meant truly living, not just existing in a perpetual state of mourning. After the recital, Emma ran into his arms, breathless and excited. "Did you see me? Did you see my pirouette?" He swung her up into a hug. "I saw you. You were perfect. A natural dancer." She giggled and poked his cheek. "Uncle David, you're smiling. A real smile. Not a sad smile." "I am," he said, his own smile widening. "Because I'm happy. You make me happy." "Good," she said matter-of-factly. "That's what uncles are for, being happy for their nieces." Later, Sarah gave him a long, tight hug. "Thank you for being here. For being present. For being the Uncle Emanese. For being the brother I found. For surviving that day so we could have this moment." David pulled back, a wry grin on his face. "Thank you for having a panic attack at the airport." They both started laughing. It was dark humor, sure, but it was humor. They were finding lightness in the tragedy, finding life after death. 3 years after the crash, David proposed to Maria. They had been dating for a year and a half, and she had become his anchor. She understood him completely, loving him, not in spite of his complicated past, but perhaps because of it. She supported his work with the foundation, encouraged his healing, and celebrated his every small victory over grief. When he got down on one knee, her first response was a soft, "Are you sure?" "I come with baggage," she said. "Widowed young. Trust issues, a grief that never fully leaves." David looked up at her. "I come with baggage too. Survivor's guilt, trauma, a relentless need to save everyone to justify my own survival. We're both damaged, but maybe we can be damaged together." She laughed through her tears. "That is the least romantic proposal I've ever heard." He chuckled. "I know. Sorry. Let me try again." He took a deep breath. "Maria, I love you. You've helped me understand that surviving means living, not just existing. That I deserve happiness. That joy honors the dead far better than perpetual grief. Will you marry me and help me keep learning those lessons every day?" "That's much better," she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you." They had a small, intimate wedding 6 months later. Sarah was there with her family. In a touching role reversal, James walked his son, David, down the aisle of father finally getting to be part of his son's life, even if it was decades late. Emma, of course, was the perfect flower girl, scattering petals with an expert's concentration. At the reception, Tyler's mother, who'd become a dear friend over the past 3 years, stood up to give a toast. "3 years ago," she began, her voice steady, "David survived when my son didn't. For a long time, I was angry about that. I couldn't understand why David got to live. But watching him these past 3 years, I've come to understand. David survived because the world needed him. It needed his compassion, his dedication to service, his incredible ability to turn an unspeakable tragedy into something meaningful." She looked directly at David. "Tyler would have liked you. You're similar in many ways, both so kind, both driven to help others. And I think Tyler would be happy knowing that his death, in some way, contributed to your transformation. That the tragedy of Flight 2847 led to a foundation that has helped hundreds of families find their footing again. That meaning was found in the meaningless. David, thank you for honoring my son, for remembering him, for living a life that makes your survival so deeply meaningful." Then she turned to Maria. "And Maria, thank you for helping him heal, for showing him that happiness is possible, even after the darkest of days. You are both wonderful people. May you have many, many happy years together." David cried during the toast. They were happy tears mixed with sad ones, gratitude mixed with grief. It was the complex, beautiful, and painful tapestry of survival, all woven into a single moment. He looked at his wife, his family, his friends, and understood. This was it. This was life. Messy, complicated, and so incredibly precious. Thank you so much for watching and sharing in this journey. If you found this story meaningful, please consider liking and subscribing for more content like this. Take care. Have you ever had a moment that completely changed your life? A sliding doors moment where one tiny decision, one missed connection, altered your entire future. I want to share a story with you today about a man named David, whose life was irrevocably changed by something as simple as a missed flight. It's a story about survival, guilt, and the profound search for meaning in the face of immense tragedy. 10 years. 10 years. A full decade had passed since the day David should have died. He was supposed to be on Flight 214, a routine trip he'd made dozens of times. But a chance encounter, a small act of kindness, made him miss that flight. He had stopped to help a lost child find her frantic parents at the airport. A simple, compassionate impulse. By the time he got to his gate, the doors were closed. He was frustrated, annoyed at the delay. But that frustration turned to his cold shock when he learned that Flight 214 had crashed shortly after takeoff. There were no survivors. 185 people, gone in an instant. And he was supposed to be one of them. The years that followed were a blur of conflicting emotions. There was overwhelming gratitude for being alive, for being able to come home to his family. But alongside it was a crushing, suffocating guilt. Why him? Why was he the lucky one? He saw the faces of the victims, in news reports, read their stories, learned about the families they left behind. They were parents, children, spouses, friends. They had dreams and plans, who's like him. Yet, their lives were cut short, while his continued. The randomness of it was a heavy burden to carry. For a long time, the question, why me, haunteth his every waking moment and crept into his dreams. He felt like an imposter, living a life he didn't deserve. This feeling is something many survivors of tragedies experience. It's often called survivor's guilt. It's that profound sense of responsibility and questioning why you were spared when others were not. It can be an incredibly isolating and painful experience. If you or anyone you know is struggling with feelings like these, please remember that help is available. Talking to a therapist or a support group can make a world of difference. You don't have to carry that weight alone. For David, the turning point didn't come overnight. It was a slow, gradual process of learning to live with the ghosts of Flight 214. He realized he could never fully understand why he survived. He could never fully reconcile the arbitrary nature of life and death. And perhaps he would never fully forgive himself for being the one who walked away. But he also realized he had a choice. He could let the guilt consume him, or he could transform it. He could turn it into a force for good. He chose the latter. He decided that his survival had to mean something. It wasn't just luck. It was a responsibility to live not just for himself, but for the 185 people who couldn't. He started to see his life as a gift, one that had to be earned every single day. This wasn't about grand, heroic gestures. It was about the small, everyday choices. One evening, his young daughter, Rebecca, came to him with a question that cut right to the heart of his new purpose. She had been learning about heroes in school and asked him, "Daddy, are you a hero?" David paused, the weight of the last 10 years settling on his shoulders. He looked into her innocent eyes and gave her the most honest answer he could. "I try to be," he said softly. Rebecca looked puzzled. "But you don't wear a cape or fight bad guys." He smiled and pulled her onto his lap. "Being a hero isn't always about that, sweetheart. Sometimes it's about being there for people. It's about being kind, even when it's not easy. It's about making a difference, no matter how small." He explained that every day, he tried to make choices that mattered. "Then be one," Rebecca said, with the simple wisdom of a child. "Help people when they need it. Be kind. Be present. Live a life that matters. That's the most important thing." Her words were a perfect echo of the mission he had set for himself. "Because you almost died?" she asked. He nodded. "Because life is precious and short, and you never know when it might end. So you have to make every day count. Every person you help, every moment you're kind, all of it matters." Rebecca hugged him tightly. "I'm glad you didn't die on that plane. I'm glad I get to have you as my daddy in that moment," holding his daughter. David felt a profound sense of peace. "I'm glad too, sweetheart. Very, very glad." That night, as he watched her sleep, he felt the immense weight and the incredible joy of his survival coexist. He had missed his flight, and it had changed everything. And every single day, he worked to make sure that missed flight, that simple act of helping a lost child, had meaning. He lived to honor those who were lost, and to cherish the life he was given. David's story is a powerful reminder for all of us. It's dedicated to the memory of everyone who has been lost in tragedies, and in honor of all the survivors who carry the heavy weight of living when others didn't. It's a recognition of the sheer randomness of life and death, and a call to action for every one of us. We can't control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we respond. We can choose to live with purpose. We can help without hesitation. We can cherish every single moment. Think about it. How many times have we been too busy, too rushed, too focused on our own destination to notice someone who needs a hand? That person struggling with their groceries, the tourist looking lost, the coworker who seems down. David's story teaches us that these are not interruptions to our day. They are the substance of our day. These small acts of kindness, of choosing compassion over convenience, are what give our lives meaning. You never know when a simple choice might not just change someone's day, but might alter the course of a life, yours or someone else's. We can all learn to transform our own tragedies, our own losses and heartaches, into meaning. We can find purpose in our pain. We can embrace the family we find along the way, the connections we make. We can live fully, with joy and gratitude, in honor of those who no longer have the chance. Let's not take for granted the incredible gift of another day. So, let's take a page from David's book. Let's help the lost child. Let's stop to assist someone in need. Let's choose. Compassion. Let's live well, love fully, and help always. That is how we honor both the dead and the living. That is how we make our time here truly matter. Thank you so much for watching and for letting me share this story with you. If it resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing for more content about finding meaning in this beautiful, complicated journey of life. Until next time, take care and live fully.